In the autumn of October 1942, within the bustling General Motors Inland Division, located in Dayton, Ohio, a profound challenge confronted George Hyde. This 52-year-old German immigrant found himself poring over technical specifications that appeared utterly unattainable. The Thompson submachine gun, a distinctive and celebrated symbol of American military prowess, carried a formidable price tag of $200 per individual unit. When adjusted for contemporary economic value, this sum exceeded $10,000, representing more than a quarter of a year's wages for an average American soldier. As the United States prepared to deploy millions of its service members across two vast and demanding theaters of war, the financial realities were stark and unforgiving. Given such exorbitant costs, the nation faced the grim prospect of being unable to adequately equip its own fighting forces. Colonel Rene Studler had issued a directive that, while unambiguous, presented an immense and daunting task: to conceive and engineer a submachine gun capable of matching the operational effectiveness of the Thompson, yet at a staggering 90% reduction in production cost. Hyde was granted a mere 7-month window before American troops were slated to launch amphibious assaults on Sicily and Italy, operations that would necessitate a massive supply of firearms, far beyond what current industrial capacity could rapidly deliver. Hyde's initial prototype demonstrated considerable potential and appeared to be a viable solution right up until its formal unveiling at the Aberdeen Proving Ground. There, a particular ordnance officer, with a dismissive tone, remarked, "It bears the appearance of an item that simply detached from the manufacturing line at a Buick factory." He continued, questioning, "Where is the meticulous artistry? Where is the distinguished wooden stock?" Despite the military's urgent demand for an economical weapon, there remained an underlying expectation for it to retain the conventional aesthetic of a genuine firearm. The resulting firearm, however, would later earn the unenviable distinction of being labeled the most aesthetically unappealing weapon ever introduced into American military service. Yet, amidst the treacherous, muddy battlefields of Italy and the brutal, ice-bound landscapes of Korea, combatants would ultimately unearth a profound and harsh reality concerning the intricate connection between a weapon's outward appearance and its fundamental role in ensuring one's continued existence. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The dawn of October 15, 1942, presented a scene of intense concentration as George Hyde labored diligently at his drafting table, illuminated by the stark fluorescent glow within the engineering department of General Motors Inland Division in Dayton, Ohio. At 52 years of age, this German-born engineer had dedicated 2 decades of his professional life to the intricate art of firearm design. However, no prior experience had adequately prepared him for the contents of the manila folder that Colonel Rene Studler had delivered just 3 days prior. The detailed specifications contained within its pages seemed to defy the very principles of mathematics, presented in a convoluted style of official jargon. The Thompson M928A1 submachine gun, a firearm that had become emblematic of American offensive capabilities, recognized from the bustling thoroughfares of Chicago to the remote shores of Guadalcanal, commanded a unit price that caused considerable discomfort among Pentagon financial analysts, $200 in 1939. Hyde, in his meticulousness, had recalculated these figures multiple times, harboring a faint hope that a simple error might have skewed the numbers. In contemporary economic terms, this amounted to a staggering $10,500, a sum exceeding 4 months' fundamental earnings for a private first-class soldier. Even the streamlined M1 Thompson, hastily introduced following the attack on Pearl Harbor, still incurred a cost of $70, a figure that offered scant financial relief when viewed against the immense fiscal demands of a global conflict. The numerical reality was undeniably harsh. The United States faced the monumental task of outfitting millions of military personnel for concurrent military operations spanning both the European and Pacific theaters. At an individual unit cost of $200, the mere act of equipping a single million soldiers would necessitate an expenditure of $200 million. This figure represented almost 1/10 of the nation's total defense budget, and it did not even factor in the additional costs associated with ammunition, personnel training, or the complex logistical support required. The Treasury Department had unequivocally stated its stance. The prohibitive cost of the Thompson submachine gun was rendering it economically unfeasible for widespread inclusion in American military inventories. Colonel Studler's specific directive resonated within Hyde's thoughts with the intensity of a profound scientific conundrum: to engineer a submachine gun that could rival the operational efficacy of a Thompson, yet be produced at an astonishing 90% lower cost. The design parameters were stringent. It demanded an entirely metal construction, chambered for 45 caliber ACP ammunition, a cyclic firing rate below 500 rounds per minute, and a formidable 90% accuracy at a distance of 50 yards, implying that 9 out of every 10 projectiles must impact within a 6 by 6 foot target zone. Perhaps most critically, the weapons fabrication had to leverage automotive manufacturing methodologies, minimizing the need for intricate machining processes, a condition that elicited derision from conventional gunsmiths and considerable apprehension among automotive engineers. The allotted time frame for this ambitious undertaking was even more unforgiving than the technical specifications, a mere 7 months. Hyde found himself with precisely 30 weeks before the United States military would require immense volumes of submachine guns to support the impending invasions of Sicily and Italy. Intelligence assessments indicated that German and Italian defensive forces were actively fortifying positions, anticipating combat scenarios that would necessitate considerable close-quarters engagement. Each passing day that American industrial facilities proved incapable of mass-producing sufficient quantities of cost-effective submachine guns represented a heightened risk for American GIs, who might otherwise confront enemy strongholds equipped with costly, yet scarce armaments that remained predominantly as entries in acquisition ledgers rather than actual tools in the hands of front-line soldiers. Hyde's initial strategic inclination was to capitalize on his team's recent proficiency in innovative, non-traditional manufacturing methods. The General Motors Inland Division had only recently successfully concluded one of the most audacious production feats of the entire conflict: the fabrication of 1 million single-shot Liberator pistols, intended for distribution among European resistance movements. These rudimentary yet entirely serviceable firearms had been constructed exclusively from stamped metal parts, utilizing standard automotive press tools and spot welding processes. He reasoned that if they could achieve such extensive mass production of pistols akin to vehicle components, then it was plausible that these identical manufacturing principles could be effectively scaled up for the production of submachine guns. The preliminary prototype, officially designated the T-15, materialized from Hyde's meticulous designs as a stark and radical deviation from conventional firearm manufacturing. In stark contrast to the Thompson, which boasted finely machined steel components and an elegantly polished walnut stock, the T-15 was composed solely of stamped and welded steel sheets, configured into an assembly that was undeniably functional, yet possessed a distinctly utilitarian and unembellished aesthetic. Its sliding wire stock could be adjusted, telescoping from a full length of 29, 8 inches down, to a more compact 22. 8 inches. The weapon's receiver, in its appearance, bore a striking resemblance to two automotive fender sections joined together, a visual similarity that was, in practical terms, entirely accurate, given its construction. Initial evaluations conducted at General Motors' dedicated proving range yielded encouraging results. The T-15 demonstrated consistent accuracy, cycled its ammunition with dependable reliability, and could be efficiently field stripped for maintenance and cleaning in less than 30 seconds. Crucially, preliminary calculations regarding its production expenses indicated a manufacturing cost of less than $25 per unit, precisely meeting the ambitious 90% cost reduction mandated by Colonel Studler. Hyde permitted himself a fleeting instant of carefully tempered optimism as he made preparations for the official presentation of his innovative design to the Aberdeen Proving Ground. The journey to Aberdeen in November was laden with the profound implications for the future of American industrial production and military strategy. Hyde acutely recognized that his revolutionary prototype signified far more than merely a substantial reduction in expenditure. It inherently posed a fundamental inquiry regarding the very essence of American military ethos. The pivotal question was whether the Army would adopt a philosophy of radical operational efficiency, or if an ingrained institutional conservatism would insist upon firearms retaining the conventional appearance of traditional implements of warfare, irrespective of their practical utility or cost-effectiveness. The definitive response arrived both promptly and with crushing severity. The ordnance officers at Aberdeen examined the T-15 with a thinly veiled contempt, their facial expressions transitioning sequentially from initial curiosity, through evident disappointment, to ultimate and unequivocal rejection. Major William Harrison, who served as Aberdeen's principal small arms evaluator, famously commented, "It bears the distinct appearance of an item that simply detached from the manufacturing line at a Buick plant." He continued his critique, demanding, "Where is the skilled artistry? Where is the distinguished wooden stock? This device appears far more akin to a common garage implement than it does to an actual instrument of combat." The deeply ingrained institutional bias within the American military extended far beyond mere aesthetic preferences. For many decades, the prevailing culture had steadfastly equated the intrinsic quality of a weapon with traditional artisanal craftsmanship. This meant a predilection for meticulously machined steel, expertly fitted wooden components, and gleaming polished surfaces that unmistakably conveyed the result of careful, skilled hand finishing. The iconic Thompson submachine gun, with its distinctive silhouette, the imposing drum magazine, and the Thompson Auto Ordnance Company's unwavering commitment to intricate detailing, had become an almost inseparable emblem of American military identity. Consequently, seasoned officers who had valiantly wielded Thompsons in the brutal trenches of France during the Great War viewed Hyde's innovative creation, fashioned from stamped metal, as nothing short of an affront to their cherished military heritage and established traditions. Hyde, a dedicated engineer, observed with palpable dismay as his painstaking months of developmental work were summarily dismissed within mere minutes of a rather cursory and indifferent examination. The military had, in fact, explicitly requested a design that emphasized economical manufacturing. Yet their immediate reaction starkly exposed a profound contradiction at the very core of their procurement philosophy. They desired significant cost reductions, but seemingly without any corresponding visual compromise in the weapon's appearance. While the T-15's operational performance unequivocally met every single technical specification, its unconventional aesthetic profoundly violated a set of unspoken, deeply ingrained assumptions about the quintessential look and feel of American military weaponry. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of this compelling video. We would be immensely grateful for your like and subscription, and please share a comment below about your origin and your thoughts on the crucial topic we are exploring. The long journey back to Dayton stretched out through the biting chill of a late November night, punctuated by a steady stream of disheartening reports filtering back from the battlefields of North Africa. These dispatches detailed significant reliability issues plaguing the Thompson in the abrasive desert sands and the oppressive jungle humidity. A profound sense of irony compounded Hyde's disappointment as he grappled with the realization that the aesthetically pleasing, traditionally crafted weapon was already faltering precisely when its performance mattered most, while the Army's senior brass remained stubbornly fixated on preserving its visual legacy. Each day that the production lines struggled to meet the demanding quotas for Thompson manufacturing represented another critical day that American soldiers might face acute shortages of essential close-quarters combat weapons. As the familiar silhouette of GM's Inland Division emerged under the soft glow of Dayton streetlights, Hyde found himself confronting a momentous decision, one that would irrevocably shape both his own professional legacy and the future trajectory of American small arms doctrine. He faced a stark choice: either redesign his groundbreaking weapon to appease the entrenched military traditionalists and their aesthetic sensibilities, or resolutely provide American soldiers with the practical tools they desperately needed to survive, irrespective of institutional preferences. The Thompson's inherent beauty, it became clear, was paradoxically proving as fatal to its widespread adoption as any enemy fire, and Hyde now held the definitive blueprint for its unglamorous but undeniably effective successor. Hyde returned to his drafting table, armed with a truly radical and transformative insight that was poised to fundamentally reshape American small arms doctrine. What if an ugly design was in fact functionally superior? The initial sting of the Aberdeen rejection had been undeniably painful, yet it had also served to crystallize a fundamental, undeniable truth about military procurement that Hyde's astute engineering mind could now strategically exploit. The Army's deeply rooted aesthetic prejudices were effectively blinding them to the undeniable reality of functional superiority. If he simply could not make his weapon conform to traditional visual expectations, he was determined to make it so demonstrably and overwhelmingly effective that its appearance would become utterly irrelevant. Collaborating closely with Frederick Sampson, General Motors' distinguished chief engineer, and a veritable master of automotive mass production, Hyde embarked upon a meticulously systematic deconstruction of every single element the military conventionally deemed essential in submachine gun design. Sampson contributed 3 decades of invaluable experience in transforming raw steel into robust and reliable automotive components, possessing a visceral understanding that true elegance in manufacturing lay in the ruthless elimination of anything that did not directly contribute to the core function of the product. Where traditional gunmakers perceived intricate craftsmanship and heritage, Sampson, with his pragmatic engineering eye, identified inefficiency and unnecessary complexity. The new prototype, designated the T-20, emerged from their synergistic collaboration as an even more profound and radical departure from established military conventions. Hyde systematically stripped away every single element that served a purely aesthetic purpose, retaining only those components that directly and unequivocally enhanced battlefield effectiveness. The resultant weapon, by traditional standards, appeared undeniably crude and unrefined, yet it represented a veritable masterpiece of functional engineering. It would soon earn the iconic nickname that would forever define its legacy: the grease gun, a moniker derived from its striking resemblance to a common automotive lubrication tool. The innovative receiver design stood as a powerful embodiment of Hyde's revolutionary approach to thinking. Instead of the laborious process of machining a solid steel block, the Thompson's method, which demanded highly skilled machinists and costly specialized equipment, the T-20 ingeniously utilized 2 pressed steel clamshells, expertly welded together along their seams. Each half of the receiver could be swiftly stamped from readily available sheet steel in mere seconds, employing existing automotive press tools. The welding process, meticulously perfected for robust car body construction, created joints that were demonstrably stronger than those achieved through traditional methods, while simultaneously eliminating countless hours of careful fitting and laborious finishing. The total manufacturing cost for this entire receiver assembly amounted to a mere $2.50, a stark contrast to the $15 required for the Thompson's machined equivalent. The weapon stock represented yet another resounding triumph of function over purely aesthetic form. Where the Thompson proudly featured a carefully fitted walnut stock, necessitating seasoned wood, precise machining, and meticulous hand finishing, the T-20 incorporated a practical telescoping wireframe design that could collapse efficiently from 29, 8 inches down to a compact 22, 8 inches. This ingenious design eliminated the need for expensive materials entirely, while simultaneously providing superior portability, a crucial advantage for tank crews and paratroopers, who required compact weapons for use in highly confined spaces. The manufacturing cost for this innovative stock was a mere 30 cents per unit, compared to the substantial $8 for Thompson's traditional wooden stocks. Perhaps Hyde's most controversial yet ultimately brilliant innovation was the dust cover safety system. This elegant solution replaced the Thompson's complex and often cumbersome mechanical safeties with a paradigm of simplicity. Merely flip the cover open to prepare the weapon for firing, and close it to engage the safety. This ingenious mechanism not only effectively protected the weapon's delicate internal components, but also provided a foolproof operational system that could not be accidentally disengaged, even under the most extreme combat stress, While many traditional ordnance officers perceived this as an unacceptably crude oversimplification, Hyde profoundly understood that raw combat effectiveness unequivocally trumped intricate mechanical sophistication. The meticulously designed bolt revealed Hyde's deepest and most astute understanding of the practical requirements of infantry combat. The T-20's robust, heavy bolt cycled at a deliberate rate of 450 rounds per minute, a notable contrast to the Thompson's much higher rate of 700-plus rounds per minute. Military traditionalists initially interpreted this slower cyclic rate as a clear indication of inferior performance. However, Hyde had assiduously studied after-action reports meticulously compiled from North Africa and the Pacific, which unequivocally revealed a crucial and often overlooked truth. Lower cyclic rates translated directly into significantly better ammunition conservation and dramatically superior controllability during periods of sustained fire. American soldiers, these reports indicated, were inadvertently wasting precious Thompson ammunition due to excessive cyclic rates that rendered accurate, controlled fire nearly impossible in real-world combat scenarios. The enclosed action represented arguably Hyde's most prescient and forward-thinking innovation. Unlike the Thompson's openly exposed operating mechanism, the T-20's bolt and its associated springs remained entirely enclosed within the protective confines of the receiver. This critical design choice meant that dirt, mud, sand, and moisture, the ubiquitous and relentless adversaries of every infantry soldier, simply could not penetrate the weapon's action to cause debilitating jams. This singular design decision would ultimately prove decisive in ensuring the weapon's reliability across incredibly diverse and challenging combat environments, from the rugged Italian mountain passes to the dense, unforgiving jungles of the Pacific theater. Pacific jungle warfare. In December 1942, comprehensive evaluations conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground yielded an unequivocal narrative regarding weapon performance, a story that distinctly transcended any superficial predilections based on appearance. During controlled mud tests, meticulously engineered to replicate the arduous conditions of infantry combat, the Thompson submachine gun repeatedly malfunctioned, seizing up consistently after firing merely 50 rounds. This necessitated immediate field cleaning and maintenance to reinstate its operational capability. In stark contrast, the T-20 prototype demonstrated remarkable resilience, discharging an impressive 200 rounds without a single stoppage, its thoroughly enclosed action proving utterly unaffected by the challenging environmental factors that routinely overwhelmed more conventional firearm designs. Further trials involving simulated desert conditions unveiled even more striking disparities in operational efficacy between the two weapons. The Thompson, when subjected to these arid environments, required meticulous cleaning after every 100 rounds fired, a performance characteristic that precisely corroborated distressing field reports emanating from the North African campaigns, where American forces frequently grappled with the dependability of their armaments amidst such harsh and unforgiving settings. The T-20, however, continued to function flawlessly for an astounding 500 rounds, without any need for maintenance, its inherently simple blowback action and robustly enclosed mechanism unequivocally demonstrating its preeminence over the Thompson's more intricate yet demonstrably susceptible construction. The ultimate corroboration of Hyde's innovative methodological paradigm arrived with the cold weather testing. Under temperatures specifically calibrated to mirror European frigid seasons, the Thompson's numerous springs and complex internal mechanism began to fail systematically, largely due to the thickening of lubricants and the contraction of metallic components. Conversely, the T-20, with its significantly reduced number of moving parts and streamlined operational mechanism, continued to function reliably, a performance that powerfully foreshadowed its critical role and eventual triumph during the pivotal Battle of the Bulge. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The accumulated reliability statistics presented an indisputable case. Across an exhaustive series of evaluations encompassing all environmental conditions, the T-20 registered an exceptional operational efficacy rate of 99.7%, a figure that dwarfed the Thompson's comparatively modest 86.3% under identical testing parameters. The weapon, often derided for its unrefined aesthetic, was not merely more economical, it was quantifiably more trustworthy, a paramount consideration when the very lives of American soldiers depended intrinsically upon the flawless operational integrity of their firearms. On the auspicious date of Christmas Eve in 1942, the Ordnance Department formally endorsed the integration of Hyde's T-20, officially designating it as the United States Submachine Gun Caliber, 45 M3. The final cost breakdown served to corroborate every facet of Hyde's radical manufacturing approach. The primary firearm itself accounted for $18.36, with an additional $2. $58 for the bolt assembly, culminating in a total manufacturing expenditure of $20.94. This represented less than half the price of the simplified Thompson, all while demonstrably exhibiting preeminent dependability across every single performance metric. This recommendation signified more than mere cost savings. It heralded a profound paradigm alteration in American military thinking, shifting decisively from an adherence to aesthetic traditionalism towards an embrace of utilitarian practicality. Hyde's unpretentious firearm had conclusively demonstrated that operational effectiveness, rather than refined elegance, ought to govern armament procurement. The lingering question remained whether American soldiers would readily accept a weapon that outwardly resembled a common automotive tool, yet performed with the unwavering reliability of the most dependable submachine gun in military history. For the preceding decade, the General Motors Guide Lamp Division, situated in Anderson, Indiana, had dedicated its expertise to refining the fabrication of automobile headlights, its expansive factory floor vibrating with the meticulous synchronization characteristic of automotive mass production. However, by January 1943, that very same industrial space was undergoing the most profound manufacturing metamorphosis in the company's entire history, as highly skilled engineers diligently reconfigured assembly lines to produce instruments of war. This dramatic transition from the creation of illumination devices to the manufacture of armaments would serve as compelling evidence that American manufacturing ingenuity possessed the capacity to adapt with astonishing celerity when the nation's very existence was critically imperiled. The M3's design epitomized an industrial paradigm shift that thoroughly substantiated every tenet Frederick Sampson had acquired during his 3 decades immersed in automotive production. Where the Thompson necessitated 21 intricately machined parts, a requirement that necessitated highly proficient artisans and costly specialized apparatus, the M3 demanded only 3 machined components: every other element could be efficiently stamped, pressed, welded, or formed utilizing pre-existing vehicular fabrication implements and methodologies readily available within the automotive industry. The receiver, for instance, employed identical resistance welding processes used for car body construction, thereby creating joints that were demonstrably more robust and uniformly reliable than those achieved through conventional firearm fabrication methodologies, while simultaneously obviating countless hours of manual adjustment and aesthetic refinement. The magazine design, in particular, perfectly encapsulated the firearms production ethos. Thompson magazines necessitated meticulous mechanical shaping, exacting dimensional specifications, and expert fabrication, processes that rendered each unit both costly and protracted to produce. In stark contrast, the M3 magazine was fabricated from metallic sheeting using pre-established stamping apparatus, with its precise measurements dictated by the forming molds rather than the individual skill of a craftsman. The feeding lips, crucial for guiding cartridges into the chamber, were ingeniously formed during the initial pressing operation, thereby eliminating the manual shaping that Thompson magazines required. Consequently, the manufacturing duration for each magazine plummeted dramatically, from approximately 45 minutes to under 3 minutes. 2. Even the aiming devices personified groundbreaking concepts regarding mass production. Thompson sights demanded intricate machining, meticulous calibration, and singular alignment during the assembly phase. The M3, conversely, utilized uncomplicated pressed metal aiming devices that were precisely perforated to final specifications during the test firing stage, enabling each weapon to be aligned quickly and accurately without the expense of individual fitting. The front sight comprised a simple stamped post, while the rear sight was a stamped aperture, unrefined in aesthetic perhaps, but operationally preeminent compared to more intricate configurations that necessitated careful adjustment and frequent maintenance. The production statistics emerging from the Anderson facility challenged all preconceived notions about weapons manufacturing. The guide lamp division possessed the capability to produce an astonishing 1,000 M3 submachine guns per day, a stark contrast to the mere 50 Thompsons that could be manufactured by traditional armaments factories. The setup time required to switch from headlight production to submachine gun manufacturing was precisely 30 minutes, unequivocally underscoring the remarkable flexibility afforded by automotive-style tooling. Furthermore, the duration for employee instruction diminished significantly, dropping from 6 months for Thompson production to a mere 2 weeks for M3 assembly, largely because automotive workers already possessed a foundational understanding of stamping, welding, and assembly line techniques. Material utilization represented yet another victory of streamlined engineering. Each M3 required a modest 5 pounds of steel compared to the substantial 8. 5 pounds needed for a Thompson, a pivotal factor when America was concurrently constructing the world's largest Navy, Air Force, and mechanized army. This diminished raw material consumption was not achieved through inferior fabrication, but rather through judicious design that intelligently removed superfluous robustness while meticulously preserving the weapon's fundamental operational soundness. Structural integrity evaluations unequivocally indicated that the M3's pressed receiver was in fact more robust than the Thompson's machined equivalent in critical areas, despite weighing significantly less. The inaugural M3 grease gun emerged from the Anderson assembly line on May 7, 1943, marking a swift completion precisely 7 months and 3 weeks after Hyde commenced his initial assignment. This innovative firearm signified a profound validation of American industrial prowess, extending far beyond the immediate benefit of reduced expenditure. Frederick Sampson observed the initial weapon's creation with the profound gratification characteristic of an engineer who had successfully demonstrated that advanced automotive production methodologies could yield military hardware superior in performance to items crafted through conventional means, all while incurring only a fraction of their typical cost. However, this groundbreaking transformation in manufacturing was on the cusp of confronting the deeply entrenched, unyielding traditions of military culture. Upon the arrival of the initial consignments of M3 submachine guns at various training camps throughout the summer of 1943, the response proved unequivocally frigid, emanating from both the rank and file and their commanding officers. These individuals had over many decades thoroughly absorbed and internalized deeply ingrained preconceptions regarding the proper appearance and feel of authentic military armaments. The disparity, when juxtaposed with the venerable Thompson submachine gun, was acutely unsettling. While service members anticipated weapons featuring lustrous polished wood and meticulously machined steel components, they instead encountered instruments fashioned from stamped metal sheets and crudely apparent spot welds, presenting a decidedly unrefined aesthetic. Staff Sergeant William Morrison, stationed at Fort Benning's esteemed infantry school, encapsulated this pervasive sentiment in his official training report, stating unequivocally, "It feels cheap in your hands. Looks like something you'd find in a garage, not an armory. The boys are calling it the grease gun, and not as a compliment." The moniker, grease gun, became firmly affixed, serving as a direct reflection of both the weapon's starkly utilitarian aesthetic and the profound skepticism it engendered among soldiers, who inherently equated superior weapon quality with time-honored traditional craftsmanship. The senior command, or Army brass, not only echoed their subordinates' reservations concerning the firearm's visual appeal, but also harbored more profound institutional misgivings about the prospect of supplanting an iconic and revered weapon with what was perceived as a hastily mass-produced alternative. Colonel James Harrison, who served as the chief of small arms training at the infantry school, articulated this widespread sentiment in his detailed report to the War Department, asserting, "The M3 may function adequately, but it fails to inspire confidence in our soldiers. Military effectiveness depends not merely on mechanical function, but on the warrior's faith in his weapons. This stamped metal substitute undermines that crucial psychological element." Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The wave of criticism quickly transcended mere aesthetic judgments, extending to the weapon's performance characteristics, which themselves embodied fundamental divergences in design philosophy. The M3's cyclic rate of 450 rounds per minute faced consistent denouncement as being sluggish when contrasted with the Thompson's brisk 700-plus rounds per minute, notwithstanding Hyde's intentional decision to prioritize enhanced controllability and more efficient ammunition conservation. Similarly, the minimalist wire stock was summarily dismissed as flimsy, despite its inherent advantages of being both lighter and significantly more compact than traditional wooden alternatives. The straightforward safety mechanism, though demonstrably more reliable and intuitive than many complex mechanical systems, was frequently characterized as crude. Training officers frequently voiced concerns that soldiers necessitated supplementary instruction to surmount their initial reluctance to place trust in the M3's unconventional configuration. Paradoxically, range reports consistently indicated that troops achieved greater accuracy with the M3, a direct consequence of its superior controllability. Yet many participants chose to ascribe this improvement to extraneous factors rather than acknowledging the firearm's intrinsic advantages. Ultimately, the profound psychological barrier erected by the M3's perceived appearance was proving to be a far more formidable impediment to acceptance than any of the technical hurdles Hyde had masterfully resolved through his superior engineering acumen. The entrenched institutional resistance culminated in a significant formal appeal from several senior officers who vehemently advocated for the recommencement of Thompson submachine gun production, arguing it was essential to uphold established American military standards. Their foundational arguments centered on crucial elements such as soldier morale, the inherent prestige associated with a weapon, and other less tangible yet vital factors that undeniably contributed to overall military effectiveness, extending far beyond simple mechanical functionality. Thus, the ugly gun, which had so effectively resolved America's pressing wartime production crisis, found itself paradoxically facing outright rejection by the very military establishment it was specifically engineered to equip, thereby instigating a profound crisis of confidence that gravely threatened to destabilize the entire program, precisely as American forces were making final preparations for the most extensive amphibious operations ever conceived in military history. The definitive vindication of the M3, however, was not forged within the sterile, controlled confines of training camps, but rather emerged dramatically from the merciless crucible of actual combat. In this unforgiving environment, deeply held aesthetic prejudices rapidly dissolved under the intense existential pressure of life-and-death functionality. By the middle of 1944, American forces were unequivocally discovering that Hyde's much-maligned, ugly gun possessed an array of inherent qualities that no degree of traditional craftsmanship, however exquisite, could ever hope to replicate. Battlefield conditions, with their stark and brutal clarity, relentlessly distinguished between theoretical performance metrics and undeniable practical effectiveness. It was the tank crews who first wholeheartedly embraced the M3's revolutionary design principles, their fervent enthusiasm stemming from an intimate and often arduous familiarity with the severely cramped fighting compartments where every single inch of available space was critically important. The Thompson's considerable length of 32 inches, when its stock was fully extended, presented a continuous and significant impediment to maneuvering within the confines of Sherman and Stuart tanks, particularly during crucial moments when crews were compelled to engage enemy infantry at close quarters, such as in the brutal environment of urban combat. In stark contrast, the M3's more manageable length of 88 inches with its stock extended offered decisive advantages within these restricted areas, while its ingenious capability to telescope down to a mere 22. 8 inches rendered both its storage and its rapid deployment substantially more facile and efficient. Staff Sergeant Robert Hayes, who commanded an M4 Sherman tank during the arduous Italian campaign, meticulously chronicled these profound practical distinctions in his comprehensive after-action report following the intense engagements around Monte Battaglia. He vividly recounted, "You try swinging a Thompson around inside a tank turret when Jerry infantry gets close. The grease gun fits where the Tommy won't go. Had to engage German soldiers at point-blank range yesterday. The M3 let me get my weapon up and firing while my loader was still wrestling his Thompson into position." Furthermore, the substantial weight differential proved to be a factor of equally critical importance during prolonged operational periods, weighing in at a lean 8. 2 pounds, as opposed to the Thompson's heftier 10-plus pounds, the M3 significantly mitigated soldier fatigue during extensive patrols and protracted combat engagements. Paratroopers, who were compelled to bear every single ounce of their equipment upon their backs during perilous combat jumps, rapidly ascertained that a 2-pound reduction per weapon, when extrapolated across an entire unit, translated into considerable tactical advantages. The official equipment report issued by the 82nd Airborne Division following Operation Market Garden specifically highlighted that M3-equipped squads possess the capacity to transport additional vital ammunition and essential medical supplies, resources that their Thompson-equipped counterparts simply could not manage. Its inability to manage complex, delicate mechanisms was unequivocally proven. However, it was the vast Pacific theater that offered the most profound affirmation for the M3's design, where the relentless environmental challenges which rendered conventional armaments ineffective starkly highlighted the ingenious construction principles conceived by Hyde. The stifling atmospheric moisture and perpetual dampness of New Guinea forged a logistical nightmare for firearm upkeep, a challenge that United States Army units equipped with the Thompson submachine gun grappled with immense difficulty. The Thompson's uncovered operating mechanism necessitated routine, meticulous upkeep to avert both deterioration and operational stoppages, an infrequent indulgence rarely afforded during prolonged engagements within dense tropical forests, especially where unforeseen skirmishes with Japanese forces could erupt without prior warning. Marine Corporal Anthony Ritchie's battlefield diary from Bougainville powerfully depicted the grim actuality of weapon dependability in equatorial environments. His entry recorded, "Day 2, Thompson started malfunctioning with alarming frequency. Pervasive moisture infiltrates all components out here. I acquired an M3 submachine gun from a wounded GI. That implement maintained continuous operation despite severe abuse. It endured for 21 days, discharging 800 projectiles. I never serviced it once. It experienced no operational failures, not even when I inadvertently submerged it in a stream during that night patrol." This first-hand account vividly illustrated the stark contrast in reliability between the two firearms under extreme conditions. The sealed operational mechanism, which officers at Aberdeen Proving Ground had originally regarded as unsophisticated or rudimentary, ultimately demonstrated critical importance in environments where conventional designs consistently malfunctioned. The M3's breech block and coiled springs remained entirely shielded from the moisture, dirt, and debris that invariably infiltrated the internal workings of Thompson mechanisms, notwithstanding diligent upkeep. Operational dispatches from Pacific Operations uniformly observed M3 reliability rates exceeding 95%, a stark contrast to Thompson rates that declined to under 70%. during protracted engagements in dense tropical terrain. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Corroboration within the European arena of conflict arrived during the harsh, unforgiving winter of 1944-45, when the infamous Battle of the Bulge exposed American armaments to severe, frigid conditions. These conditions brought to light essential disparities in engineering between conventional and novel methodologies. Sub-zero climatic conditions, plummeting well below freezing, solidified Thompson mechanisms, rendering these weapons inoperable at critical junctures when German forces launched unexpected assaults against American defensive positions. Private First Class Michael Sullivan, serving with the 2nd Infantry Division, chronicled the stark truth of warfare in winter in a letter sent home. December 23rd, the mercury plummeted to 15 degrees below zero. German forces launched an assault prior to dawn. Johnson's Thompson froze solid. It was impossible to retract the operating rod. My grease gun kept firing rapidly and consistently as if operating in warm, temperate conditions in Georgia. That unappealing firearm preserved the lives of our entire unit that morning. The M3's uncomplicated direct impingement operating system, coupled with its reduced number of internal components, demonstrated intrinsic excellence in extreme meteorological environments, where the Thompson's intricate internal workings necessitated exact dimensional allowances that frigid temperatures interfered with. The M3's sturdy build and straightforward functionality maintained consistent, dependable performance. The substantial breech block, which detractors had characterized as sluggish, actually delivered enhanced operational capability in below-freezing conditions by preserving adequate kinetic energy to complete the firing sequence when less substantial operating systems ceased to function. Captured enemy reconnaissance documents from the Ardennes offensive specifically designated 3 equipped American military detachments as high-value objectives, acknowledging the firearm's operational efficacy in intimate combat engagements during frigid conditions. German Army post-engagement assessments from the Wehrmacht observed, "The American grease gun is exceptionally lethal in the process of neutralizing fortified positions. It is straightforward, dependable, and perpetually operational, even in extreme cold, when other weapons fail." A profound mental paradigm shift among American troops mirrored the firearm's battlefield justification. Early doubt and preliminary distrust yielded to reluctant admiration as soldiers realized that the M3's unassuming aesthetic concealed exceptional operational capability in combat. The informal designation grease gun transitioned from a term of derision to one of fondness as troops developed confidence in Hyde's innovative engineering principles. Technical Sergeant David Chen, a seasoned veteran of both the Italian and French campaigns, encapsulated this changing perception in his regimental chronicle. "We initially referred to it disparagingly as the grease gun. It resembled a tool found in an automotive workshop rather than a military weapons depot. But subsequent to half a year of active engagement, that utilitarian implement ensured the survival of a greater number of our comrades than any aesthetically pleasing firearm ever could. Practical utility prioritized above visual appeal. That principle is paramount for survival." However, precisely as operational proving grounds were confirming the M3's preeminence in warfare, catastrophe befell the initiative from an unforeseen source. Problems with manufacturing standards arose in early 1945 as a swift escalation of manufacturing output undermined the established production benchmarks that had ensured the firearm's dependability. Some M3s experienced inadequate recoil spring tension, which led to ammunition loading malfunctions, while others encountered fractures in the operating bolt during prolonged periods of continuous discharge. Detractors who had resisted the project from its inception capitalized on these shortcomings as justification for their preconceived notions regarding appearance and established practices. This predicament imperiled the obliteration of all accomplishments Hyde had achieved through advanced design and combat-proven efficacy. Directives were issued to cease the manufacture of the M3 and to resume the production of the Thompson. Notwithstanding the conclusive operational proof supporting the more recent weapon model, Hyde's groundbreaking firearm confronted the prospect of discontinuation precisely when its dominance in warfare was growing indisputable. This situation instigated an administrative predicament that would ultimately decide if United States infantry weapon policy would embrace practical advancements or retreat into conventional ideologies that placed aesthetic qualities above operational utility. The intelligence received at Hyde's Dayton administrative headquarters in February 1945 contained a cruel paradox that summarized the complete narrative of the M3. The final Thompson automatic weapon had been manufactured by Savage Arms' production line, ceasing the production of the United States' most recognizable firearm, not due to becoming outdated, but rather because of financial impracticality. Subsequent to fabricating 1,500,000 Thompson submachine guns, the aesthetically pleasing firearm had become economically unviable to produce, a casualty of identical budgetary constraints that had motivated Hyde's innovative engineering. The cessation of Thompson production left a void that solely the M3 was capable of occupying. Yet manufacturing standard problems still imperiled the collapse of the program, precisely when its indispensability reached its peak. Hyde and Frederick Sampson proceeded with systematic promptness to pinpoint and rectify the manufacturing defects that critics were leveraging to weaken the entire endeavor. The inquiry uncovered that the swift growth of production plants had jeopardized the exact metallurgical requirements and coiled wire elasticity that ensured the firearm's consistent performance. The persistent efforts to enhance the M3 submachine gun ultimately culminated in making the weapon exceptionally dependable. The inherent solution embodied the very same foundational engineering philosophy that had initially brought the M3 into existence, a foundational commitment to straightforward ingenuity in tackling intricate challenges. Improvements in the metallurgical composition of the steel components effectively eradicated the recurring problem of bolt fractures, while meticulously calibrated alterations to the spring mechanisms successfully rectified the persistent ammunition feeding malfunctions that had afflicted various individual firearms. The refined M3A1, officially introduced in December 1944, comprehensively resolved all valid criticisms while simultaneously preserving the economic and production efficiencies that had rendered its mass manufacture feasible. The most apparent modification was the substitution of the delicate charging mechanism with a straightforward aperture directly integrated into the bolt, thereby removing the part most susceptible to breakage or malfunction during operational deployment. A more robust sighting apparatus enhanced the weapon's inherent precision, yet it could still be fabricated through established industrial methods, akin to those used in the automotive sector. Most significantly, the implementation of stringent quality assurance procedures eradicated the inconsistent production benchmarks that had contributed to reliability issues in some manufacturing batches. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. By the cessation of hostilities, the quantitative validation of Hyde's methodology was exceptionally compelling and beyond dispute. Total M3 production reached 694 units, which translated into fiscal efficiencies exceeding $150 million when compared to an equivalent output of Thompson submachine guns. The weapon's operational dependability, as assessed in terminal trials, achieved an impressive 99.7%, exceeding even the most sanguine forecasts made by Hyde himself. The firearm that had been initially disparaged as unsophisticated and untrustworthy had, in fact, demonstrated a level of steadfastness unprecedented among submachine guns in the annals of American military ordnance. However, the definitive affirmation of the M3's merits materialized amidst the brutal realities of the Korean War, where exceptionally frigid environmental factors rendered the majority of firearms inoperable, unequivocally demonstrating the inherent excellence of Hyde's foundational engineering principles. The conflict provided a conclusive crucible for the long-standing discourse concerning practical utility versus superficial appearance that had surrounded the weapon since its inception, as the harsh climatic exigencies effectively obliterated any preoccupation with visual appeal, thereby laying bare its unadulterated, intrinsic mechanical efficacy. Private Bob Shine, serving with the 2nd Infantry Division, personally attested to the M3's pronounced advantage in frigid conditions during the arduous retreat from Seoul in January 1951. His unit engaged with Chinese military forces amidst profoundly freezing temperatures that transformed the consistent functioning of firearms from a mere matter of choice into an absolute imperative for continued existence. "I hated that gun when they issued it to me at Fort Lewis," Shine later recalled, his vivid recounting underscoring the stark contrast between initial prejudice and battlefield reality. "Looked like junk compared to the Thompson guys carried in the movies. But when we hit those Chinese positions at Wanju, my grease gun fired every single round. Buddy next to me with a Thompson jammed after 10 shots. That ugly gun brought me home." Chinese People's Volunteer Army after-action reports, captured during the Spring Offensive, explicitly identified American servicemen armed with M3s as primary objectives, acknowledging their formidable performance in the confined and intense combat scenarios that characterized much of the Korean conflict. Evaluations from communist intelligence agencies highlighted the weapon's unwavering dependability even under environmental stresses that rendered other personal firearms inoperative, designating formations outfitted with the M3 as high-priority dangers during infantry assaults. A significant shift in the prevailing sentiment within the American armed forces mirrored the weapon's validation through active engagement. What had started as institutional derision gradually transmuted into profound professional esteem as military leaders, who had initially disparaged the M3's aesthetic, came to appreciate its undeniable efficacy in combat. By 1953, even the most staunchly conservative figures within the military establishment conceded that Hyde's ugly gun had proven more reliable than the beautiful Thompson it had been designed to supersede. The fundamental tenet that Hyde had forged through his superior engineering prowess ascended to the status of official doctrine, exerting a profound influence upon American military acquisition strategies for numerous decades. Function trumps form. Good enough engineered correctly beats perfect engineered wrong. Effectiveness, not elegance, determines weapon selection. These groundbreaking notions, initially considered radical when first articulated by Hyde, progressively solidified into conventional understanding that informed decisions spanning the entire spectrum, from the conception of personal firearms to the deployment of colossal armament platforms. George Hyde passed away in 1963 with his groundbreaking creation still an active component within the American Armed Forces, successfully surviving both the detractors who had scorned it and the superficial biases that had initially hindered its acceptance. The M3 served diligently through the conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond, amassing an operational history that unequivocally validated every facet of Hyde's fundamental design, ethos, and simultaneously illustrating the lasting significance of practical engineering solutions when contrasted with entrenched organizational conservatism. The enduring impact of this firearm transcended its operational deployment in combat zones to instigate a profound paradigm shift in American perceptions concerning martial efficacy. The grease gun demonstrated conclusively that genuine innovation frequently presents itself as unappealing to sensibilities accustomed to conventional attractiveness, that truly transformative remedies often contravene preconceived notions, and that authentic combat utility originates from armaments that perform reliably under duress, even when all other systems falter, rather than from those merely possessing an imposing appearance during non-combat displays. The concluding segment of the M3's narrative unveiled a deep insight regarding the intrinsic nature and operational prowess of the American nation. The country, which had initially spurned Hyde's creation due to its unrefined exterior, ultimately adopted it wholeheartedly on account of its unwavering functionality. The superficial biases that had almost terminated the program yielded to an pragmatic acknowledgement of its superior engineering. The ugly gun, once deemed unsuitable for American servicemen, transitioned into the most dependable submachine gun within their inventory. For the countless GIs who wielded the M3 across 3 distinct conflicts, the firearm's outward aspect became utterly negligible when contrasted with its steadfast reliability. They came to understand that true elegance in military apparatus did not reside in burnished finishes or artisanal construction, but rather in unwavering performance during moments when human existence teetered precariously. The grease gun's fundamentally practical design epitomized American inventiveness at its zenith. The capacity to divest itself of all superfluous elements while meticulously retaining every critical component. In the end, George Hyde's ugly gun imparted upon America the profound lesson that the most aesthetically pleasing resolution is, in fact, the one that functions flawlessly when all other alternatives falter. The foundational tenet he forged through diligent engineering and rigorous combat authentication evolved into a fundamental pillar of American military dogma. That operational efficacy rather than superficial aesthetics, truly dictates intrinsic value. The M3 grease gun conclusively demonstrated that, on occasion, the most transformative achievement lies in crafting an object of sufficient simplicity to perform impeccably and consistently when circumstances demand it most.